Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. It's really lovely to have you here. Today we are focusing on questioning, question styles, and it links in with our question course that we run on the Teach2030 website. So it's part 2 in a series of 3, and we're talking about the different types of questions that we can understand. And we're going to start with this workshop with some pedagogy on Bloom's taxonomy. We're going to work out what that actually is if we don't already know, just refresh ourselves, and then we're going to move on to consider how to use questions effectively in our classroom rather than just throwing out numerous questions without purpose. I think as educators we need to be very mindful of how we use our questions. And then we're going to reflect upon the best way to respond to those different questions that we put out there to our students and to our colleagues. So I'm going to immediately hand you over to Hamid, who has agreed to take us through Bloom's taxonomy. Is that okay, Hamid?
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. We shall be starting with the Bloom's taxonomy. Like the second, this will be the second workshop on questioning, and we want to analyze why it is important for us to understand the concept of Bloom's taxonomy, so as to empower us effectively to ask the right question. So let's hit the ground running. Bloom's taxonomy is a framework that is geared towards using question techniques to foster critical thinking and engagement. So it's a model used to classify educational learning objectives into levels of complexity and specificity. So it demonstrates, it categorizes learnings into complexity. Let's think of it as a ladder, as it is showing on our screen, where with 6 rungs, where each rungs represents a deeper level of thinking. So it starts with remembering, and as it moves higher, it ends with creating. So when we look at Bloom's taxonomy, at the lower bottom, we have three level at the lower bottom, at the lower tier. We have the remembering, understanding, and applying. This aspect, we are using our strategy to encourage our students to remember or to recall information. This is at the peripheral. We've not this time we are not testing the depth of knowledge, but it's very important to note that irrespective of the level we want to play along between the upper tier of the ladder or the lower tier of the ladder, our teaching strategy is very important. And that is why it is important for us as a teacher to understand the word Bloom's taxonomy. Although when we hear the word, it might sound ambiguous. However, every day, perhaps we use it in our class, but it's very important to be clear about it so as to know how we want to navigate ourselves at the level of the ladder. So it's very important that learners have the concept at the base before moving to the depth. So they must have, it means learners must have understand the concept of remembering, understanding, then applying what they learned. That's the first 3 tiers of the ladder. So moving to the next slide.
I think that's it. I think you've covered it really, really well, Hamid. Thank you so much. And just as an example of Bloom's taxonomy, although when we hear a name such as this guy, Mr. Bloom, we sometimes get a bit intimidated by pedagogical terms, but I think we actually do this quite often in our teaching. I know that when I go into my classroom, I always begin with asking my students to remember what we've done last lesson, to recall what we've learned before I can move them forward, just so check how their learning is progressing, whether they're all at the same level or whether we need to go over a few issues that are maybe not as clear. And then I kind of test that understanding, that remembering, to see if they can move up that ladder, up to the next tier that Hamid was mentioning, and just ask them to demonstrate their understanding of what we have been learning and complete tasks. And then I would ask some more questions to maybe my more advanced students, the higher attainers in the room, and that would be where I'd be moving to the top levels of Bloom's taxonomy, where I'm asking them to consider writer's effects, for example, why certain choices have been made. And that brings us on to higher order questions. So as I said, they fall into the top tiers of the model. We've moved from recall and basic understanding, which helps us to formatively assess our students. And now we're developing them to analyse choices writers made, or analyse decisions that are made in mathematics or in geography, to analyse and evaluate some results that they may come up with in science. So I'm going to put you to the test now and see if you can put some examples in the text box of some higher order questions that you would typically use in your classrooms. Please. Some examples of higher order questions in the chat box, please. What might you use in your subject? These are questions that would generally start with a how or a why, rather than asking for a yes or no response. We want some open questions. Anybody want to hazard a few in the chat box, or even feel free to unmute yourself and suggest any? Hamid, can you come up with a higher order question? No, I'm asking you, James, are we asking our students, or students asking the question? What would you ask your students? Hamid, lovely. What are your thoughts on the main character decision? Yeah, brilliant. An example of asking for some evaluation. Hugh, lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining. How is electricity produced? Wonderful. So we're asking them to analyze it, to explore it, and to explain it. Some really good examples. Thank you. Okay, and there's a few more. What is your judgment on the outcome of that experiment you might want to use in a science lesson? What do you suggest the next steps to be? So these are examples of higher order questions that would follow on from our basic recall, which might be how we would introduce or begin a lesson and the type of questions we would use. You might feel that you use them automatically without actually analysing the different types of questions that you're using. So then it's our responsibility to use questions effectively. Hamid, would you like to take over this slide? Are you there? Are you still with us, Hamid?
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah. Now, I didn't pick that. What do you say?
Are you happy to do this slide, Hamid?
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Lovely. About using questions
So
effectively.
it's very important for us as a teacher to understand where our learners are before we introduce the concept of higher order thinking question, or segregate between higher and lower order thinking question. So knowing the attainment level of our PPs, of our learners, will guide us on how to break down instruction and how to ask the right question. Because if we just take the leap without considering the learners in our class, some of them will get intimidated, and the purpose of learning will be defeated. So there is need for us to consider the lower attainers and the higher attainers. And we also have to find the ways to form a synergy so that we are building up the confidence of the strugglers, giving them a bit of a scaffold. And we are also bridging the gap between them. So we are taking them bit by bit to also come to the level of evaluating, analyzing, and creating. So there is a greater need for us as a teacher to find an anchor between the lower order thinking and questions and the higher order thinking question. So it all boils down to knowing your learners fully well and getting prepared as a teacher on how to effectively use the questioning techniques.
Lovely. Thank you, Hamid. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's really important that we're prepared with that prior knowledge of our students, the students that we have in front of them, if they have any additional needs, and how we are going to support our weaker retainers, such as with scaffolding, where we bridge the gap. We don't just give them a task that can be overwhelming and intimidating, but we use questions that will support them through a task. So scaffolding works to help us move our weaker retainers up to the top tiers of Bloom's taxonomy. Work our way through the levels so that all students who are retaining at different levels, they work up their own ladder, for example. So can you suggest a time where you've increased the difficulty of your lesson by stages? How have you used questions to challenge the weaker retainers compared to stronger retainers? Would anybody like to contribute? I can see I've got a few in the text box. What was the last topic we treated? What did you understand by adverbs of frequency? Lovely. Thank you very much, Adelia. Some good examples of recall and understanding. Well done. List, lesson, learn from the topic to discuss. Yep, well done. Thank you very much, James. Can anybody suggest in the text box or verbally how they have used scaffolding or supported perhaps weaker retainers to move them up the tiers of Bloom's taxonomy? What strategies do you use in your classroom? So one example that I've used is I've used some group work, but I've actually asked the students to gauge where they would like, which table they would like to sit at. So I would have 3 differing levels of attainers. So it would be a table where students work completely independently through tasks that I've set. Then I would have the middle of the range where students could have a little bit of help from the teacher, but not as much. And then I would have a fully supported table where I would constantly sit and I would support maybe my weaker retainers to work through a task. So this allows the students to take ownership of their own learning and their own level of learning. And that was how I supported some students through a lesson and used their peers to support each other through group work. Hugh, thank you. Share one thing you've learned. Well done. Thank you. Can anyone else suggest an example of a lesson that they've taught where they've used support and scaffolding to move students up through Bloom's taxonomy?
Yeah, can I give one example?
Lovely,
Yes,
James. Thank you.
yes. I will come down to remembering and on the Bloom's taxonomy, and in that I present a question, asking them, giving a scenario of asking them to list, for example, the types of hydraulics to gain their understanding of what hydraulic is. So I will ask them to list the 2 types of hydraulic system so that they will be able to explain. If I want to go higher up to application, I would ask them to go on the machine and identify the components, because I gave them for them to be able to apply what they have learned in a class and then on the actual machine. So I will ask them to go and identify the type of hydraulic system that is used within the excavator or in the bulldozer or whatever.
That's brilliant, James. Thank you. So what you're saying is that you would ask them what they remember and then actually ask them to demonstrate it practically to prove that they know how to do it. They can apply it. Is that right? Is that right, James? Yeah. Asking your students to apply their knowledge by physically carrying out the knowledge. Have I lost James or is it mine? Boris, I have used the Jigsaw approach. The student used words completing a mind map worksheet. Lovely. Boris, would you like to unmute and tell us a bit more about that? Hello, is my signal dropped? Can anybody confirm whether I'm still live or has my signal dropped?
Yep, yeah, I can still hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yes. Although it's
Oh,
breaking, but I'm
fantastic.
hearing you.
That's great. Boris, are you there? You've put in the text box a really nice example about the jigsaw approach even. Would you like to tell us a bit more about it? Perhaps we might come back a bit later to Boris. Okay, would anybody else, before we start tying things together, would anybody else like to share any experiences of using questions progressively throughout their teaching and within their classrooms? It may be live or it may be in the text box. Okay, I'm taking the quietness as people don't feel they want to share any ideas today. However, let's just have a reflection on responding to questions in our classrooms. So as you can see on the screen, questions do have a time and a place. We need to use them as a learning tool because in that way they can be very effective. And as teachers, we do use a lot of questions, but we need to be mindful as well that we don't overwhelm our students. I sometimes fall into that trap and I can see confusion on my students' face and I immediately pull it back because I know I've gone too far and I've asked too many questions. And I can really see that with my weaker attainers. So it makes me more mindful in my classroom of using questions thoughtfully and with intention. Again, students obviously can also be the people who ask questions. It doesn't necessarily have to always be teachers. We get students who ask questions generally for help, for support through a task, but also it allows deeper discussions when we have maybe higher attainers who ask more evaluative questions themselves, and it leads to a further discussion that allows learning to progress and develop even further. So questions can enhance lessons too. But as you can see, I've also written that we must make sure that we don't let students steer our lesson off course. I have one class who are very adept at doing that at the moment, but I'm just about keeping on track with them. So they're very good. When I set them off on a task, I have about 12 hands instantly go up in the room. And I know that quite a few characters are doing so to try and move away and avoid doing the task that I've set to them. So just be very mindful that your students are genuinely asking for help and support and not trying to steer your lessons off course. And the other point to make is that it's okay if sometimes we don't have the answer. Sometimes I find students ask me for a definition and I can't give a clear and very concise response. So I show them, I put into practice using a dictionary to look up a definition because that's a form of teaching as well, how to find an answer if you don't have it. And to show them that it's okay that their teacher doesn't always have the answers, that it's a learning journey for everyone. So to sum up then, think about questioning in your classroom. Think about using the Bloom's taxonomy model. I'm sure we do it automatically, but now that's the pedagogical term that we can use, Bloom's taxonomy, that will show you how you are using questions effectively. We have our course, Questioning in the Classroom, which goes more deeply into these topics and has even more scenarios. Hamid, would you like to add anything more before we close for today?
Thank you, Sarah. You've been great. Yeah, it's just that there is a need for us to have it at the back of our mind. Asking effective questions as a teacher also requires practice and a deliberate planning. So we need to plan ahead, think of how we want to mirror question in our classes, so that by so doing, our learners will get used to it and we can move them from the low order thinking to higher order thinking learners.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that contribution. Adelia, I can see that you've raised your hand. Would you like to unmute and contribute?
Thank you so much for this brilliant lesson. I think it's going to really help. And I wish to also, I just have this feeling that in the very large classrooms where we find ourselves and with limited time, for instance, to teach them, I always feel that the lower attainers in my class don't go home really satisfied because you are struggling with time to, make sure you cover the program. And at the same level, you're supposed to use different questions for them. And you find out that in trying to do that, you may end up finishing your time without actually teaching a lesson. So I wish to suggest, I don't know, like I said, I have a class of 99, I have a class of 80 something. And so you see, it's a little bit difficult. Maybe we could we started with the lesson to meet up with such large classes, but I don't know, some other persons could give suggestions on how one can meet up with such using Bloom taxonomy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adelia, for your contributions. You're absolutely right. We are very limited to the time schedules that our lessons have. I have a very short period of time, 50 minutes, to teach a lot of context before my next class comes in. So we have to be, as Hamid said, really prepared before we walk into the classroom, know exactly what we want to deliver, and also know our students so we can deliver our content to reach all learners and to make sure we're attending to the different levels of need and attainment in the classroom. Regarding larger classes, Adelia, Alex and I are going to be doing some more work on that. I know she's already reached out, and hopefully next year we're going to be offering some more insight into how to manage. But we need your help too with that, everybody. We need lots of insight with the type of classes and the type of strategies that you use. Okay, is there anything else anybody would like to contribute? Well, in that case, I'd like to thank Hamid once again for co-hosting with me this afternoon. It's been lovely to have you explaining your ideas and your thoughts on Bloom's taxonomy. Thank you very much, Hamid. And thank you all to attending today. It's been really good to hear your contributions. Thank you so much. And it's been lovely to see you all.